Are you okay? You look sad. That's what she signed, 12-year-old Araya Coleman, standing there with her small hands trembling, her eyes wide, her breath catching as every sound inside the Hudson Terrace suddenly seemed to disappear. Silas Carrington didn't move at first. He couldn't. His fork had just slipped from his fingers, hitting the marble plate with a sharp metallic crack that sliced through the soft jazz floating in the air. Conversations died. Even the waiter closest to his table stopped mid-step, holding 2 glasses of water like he was afraid to breathe too loudly. Silas stared at this child as if she had cracked open the night. He had eaten in that same private corner booth for 7 straight years. Always alone, always silent, always staring out toward the dark river like he was searching for something no one else could see. Most people in New York knew him as the mute billionaire. Some feared him. Some pitied him. No one approached him. No one dared. And absolutely no one knew he understood sign language. But this little girl. She had walked straight into his silence like she belonged there. Araya lifted her hands again, her fingers forming the same question, slower this time, gentler. Why do you look so sad? And that's when it hit him, not like a memory but like a punch to the chest. Silas's heart dropped. His throat tightened. His breathing turned thin and shaky. Because 7 years ago, on the night his younger sister vanished, she signed those exact words to him. The same rhythm. The same softness. The same tilt of the head. Araya had no way of knowing what she just reopened. She had no idea who she was speaking to. No idea what ghost she had awakened. Silas's hands rose, slowly, painfully, as if they hadn't been used in a lifetime. His fingers jerked through the air, forming stiff, rusty shapes. Who taught you that? Araya blinked, surprised. Then she whispered, barely audible, my uncle. He used to work for a man who disappeared. The words slammed into Silas so hard he had to grip the edge of the table. A waiter stepped forward, trying to check on him, but Silas didn't even acknowledge him. His eyes were locked on the girl, this quiet, brave little girl who somehow reached into a part of his life everyone else had learned not to touch. Araya looked at him like she could feel something breaking inside him. Something he thought he had buried. He told me something about you, she signed shakily. A sudden cold breeze swept through the room. Something was coming. Something neither of them were ready for. Silas leaned toward Araya, signing one trembling question. What did your uncle tell you about me? As every face in the restaurant turned toward them. The lights steadied, but the room didn't relax. There was something in the air now, something sharp and uneasy, like everyone sensed a secret had just slipped through a door they never noticed before. Araya swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. He told me, if anything ever happened to him, I should look for a man who eats alone by the river. The words felt unreal even to her. But Silas? His entire body reacted. His shoulders locked up. His eyes widened. His breathing became shallow, almost frantic. Anyone watching could see it. This wasn't confusion. This was recognition. Deep, painful recognition. The girl didn't know it, but she had just repeated another sentence from Silas's past, one he never wanted to hear again. 7 years ago, after the accident that stole his voice, after the night his sister vanished, after the scandal that destroyed his reputation, someone sent him a message containing those very same words. You'll know the truth when the one who finds you signs your pain. He ignored it. He thought it was a taunt. A cruel joke from someone trying to break him even further. But now it felt like a prophecy. Araya's hands trembled at her sides. This wasn't the reaction she expected. She thought he'd nod politely or maybe not understand her at all. Instead, she saw something raw and broken flash across his face, something she didn't have a name for but felt deep in her chest. Silas lifted his hands again, his fingers shaking uncontrollably. "What happened to your uncle?" Araya's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "He disappeared 2 days ago. He left a note telling me not to panic. But then, nothing." She paused. "And he was scared, Mr. Carrington. I'd never seen him like that before." Silas leaned back slowly, as if every muscle in his body suddenly weighed twice as much. Her uncle once worked for a man who vanished. Just like Silas's top security officer vanished. Just like Silas's sister vanished. Just like the documents that could have cleared Silas's name vanished. It was all the same night. The same timeline. The same impossibility. A chill ran up Araya's arms as she watched Silas, her instinct whispering one truth she didn't want to accept. This man wasn't just sad. He wasn't just lonely. He was afraid. And he wasn't afraid of her. He was afraid for her. A breaking news alert flashed across the restaurant TV, and Araya froze when she saw her uncle's face appear on the screen. If stories like this move you, don't forget to subscribe to Slush Stories, because what happens next will shock you. For a moment, Araya couldn't hear anything, not the clatter of dishes, not the gasps coming from tables around her, not even the voice of her aunt calling from across the room. Her world had gone completely quiet, the way it always did when she got too overwhelmed. She stood frozen beside Silas Carrington's booth, watching the shock deepen in his eyes. But this chapter of her life didn't start here. Not in the fancy Manhattan restaurant with a billionaire staring at her like she held a missing piece of his soul. It started back home in Atlanta, in a neighborhood where people knew each other by the sound of their car doors closing. Araya was the kid who communicated with her hands more than her voice, not because she couldn't speak, but because noise felt like pressure on her body, like weight she didn't ask for. Crowded rooms made her shut down. Loud arguments made her stomach twist. Even school hallways were too much sometimes. So her uncle, her favorite person in the world, taught her sign language. He used to tell her, "Your hands speak louder than most people's mouths ever will." He wasn't wrong. Araya grew up signing stories with him in their living room, stories about courage, secrets, and people searching for who they really were. He made her feel seen in a way talking never did. And then one night everything changed. He rushed into the house with a box of documents, told her aunt to pack a bag, and took Araya to stay with a friend for 3 days. He never explained what scared him. He never said who was after him. He only left one message taped to her notebook. "If anything happens to me, find the man who eats alone by the river." She repeated that note in her mind every day since he disappeared. She didn't know what it meant. She didn't know who that man was. She didn't even believe they would ever find him. But here he was, sitting across from her, watching her like she had unlocked a door that had been sealed shut. Silas didn't blink. He didn't gesture for security. He didn't signal for help. He simply studied her hands like they were pieces of a puzzle he'd been waiting years to finish. Araya took a small step back, unsure if she had crossed some invisible line. But then Silas did something no one in the restaurant expected. He softened. His expression wasn't cold or distant anymore. It looked scared. Hurt. Human. Araya felt her own heartbeat slow. For the first time since her uncle vanished, she didn't feel alone in her fear. She lifted her hands again, trying to keep them steady. "Did you know him?" she sighed. Silas didn't answer. Not right away. His jaw tightened and his eyes lowered to the table, like he was staring at ghosts she couldn't see. Moments stretched thin between them. The truth floated there, close enough to touch, but he couldn't bring himself to grab it. Instead, he signed something different. "Why did he send you to me?" Before Araya could answer, her aunt's voice cut through the air, full of panic. "Baby, what are you doing? Come here." Araya turned, but she wasn't fast enough. Someone from a nearby booth stood, phone already recording, whispering loudly to their friend. That's Silas Carrington, the mute billionaire. And he's talking to a kid. A murmur spread across the room like wildfire. People weren't just watching now. They were speculating, judging, creating their own version of the story. Araya felt her face heat with embarrassment. She tried to step back again, but Silas lifted a hand, not touching her, just stopping her gently. Not out of ownership, not out of authority, but out of urgency. He needed her to stay. The question was, why? Araya's aunt reaches her side, just as Silas signs a phrase meant only for Araya's eyes. Your uncle knew what happened to my sister. Silas Carrington didn't stand when Araya's aunt rushed in to pull her niece close. He didn't flinch, didn't gesture, didn't interrupt. He simply watched the girl he now knew wasn't a coincidence, wasn't an accident, wasn't random at all. But to understand why she mattered, you have to know who Silas was before the silence. Years ago, he was New York's golden name in tech. A visionary who built impossible things. Devices that read vibrations in the brain, programs that could predict motor patterns, technologies that felt like magic. Investors followed him. News outlets adored him. His younger sister, Camille, called him the quiet genius who never stops listening. Silas didn't speak much even then. He was reserved, thoughtful, intense, but he had a voice. A deep, steady one. He used to read Camille bedtime stories long after she was too old for them. He used that voice to present at conferences, to defend his patents, to argue with board members who doubted him. But everything changed on one stormy night 7 years ago. There was an accident inside his own research facility, an explosion no one fully explained. Silas survived, but his vocal cords didn't. And Camille disappeared hours later. No note, no trail, nothing. Then came the scandal. Documents leaked. Contracts vanished. His top security officer, Camille's closest friend, went missing the same night she did. Silence swallowed Silas. Rumors replaced truth. Some said he caused the accident. Some said Camille ran away. Some said Silas wasn't a victim at all, but the mastermind. So Silas did what hurt people often do. He disappeared without leaving the city. He ate alone at the same restaurant, at the same table, at the same hour, staring at the river like he was waiting for someone who never came. New York forgot him. The world forgot him. But he didn't forget his sister. And now, as Araya stood trembling under the weight of the moment, Silas lifted his hands again and signed the words that burned at the center of his silence. Your uncle knew what happened to her. Araya's aunt gasped. Sir, please, we don't know what you're talking of. But Silas didn't look at her. His focus was locked on Araya, because she was the real connection. The unexpected witness. The child whose uncle had slipped through the shadows of Silas's past. Araya stepped closer again, slowly, like she didn't even realize she was doing it. Her hands formed a single question, heavy as a stone. Is she alive? Silas breathed in sharply. His eyes glistened, not with tears but with fear. He wanted to answer. He wanted to tell this child everything. He wanted to believe Camille was still out there. But before he could sign anything back, the TV behind the bar blared louder, forcing everyone to turn. A reporter's voice echoed. Breaking news out of Queens. A man was found unconscious in an abandoned warehouse, carrying documents tied to the Carrington scandal that rocked the tech world 7 years ago. Araya's aunt froze. Araya's knees buckled. Silas's heart stopped. Because on the screen was the face of Araya's missing uncle. The reporter continued. According to an anonymous source, the man tried to speak before losing consciousness, and the first word he whispered was Silas Carrington. For a long moment, no one in the restaurant moved. The TV kept playing, the reporter's voice steady and unaware of the knife it had just twisted into 3 different lives. Araya stood completely still, unable to look away from her uncle's face on the screen. He looked pale, bruised, and barely conscious, but he was alive. Her aunt clutched her shoulder, whispering, "Oh my God, oh my God." But Araya didn't hear her. Not really. Her ears were buzzing, her chest tightening. She felt like she was floating outside her own body. Silas Carrington, meanwhile, felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear, not grief, but recognition. He knew the warehouse in Queens. He had been there once, years ago, following a rumor he was too afraid to confirm. The memory hit him hard. Camille's handwriting scrawled on a damp concrete wall. A warning he didn't understand then. Now he did. Araya's uncle didn't just stumble into Silas's past. He walked directly into the place Silas stopped searching. And someone didn't want him to walk back out. Araya slowly turned toward Silas. Her eyes were wet, shiny, but fierce. She signed shakily. "He knew your sister? How?" Silas inhaled deeply, forcing himself to breathe through the panic clawing at his ribs. His fingers rose, slow at first, then more certain. "He worked for me." He was one of the only people she trusted. Araya blinked in shock. Her uncle had never mentioned the billionaire who lost his voice. Never explained why he knew sign language. Never said he had once guarded someone important enough to vanish over. Her aunt finally found her own voice. "Sir, I don't know what this is, but my niece needs to go home. This is too much." The sound cut her off. A faint clang from the restaurant's front entrance. Metal. Intentional. Wrong. A security guard hurried toward the door, muttering to himself. Another followed. Somewhere behind them, a couple whispered that they saw someone lurking by the windows before the lights flickered earlier. Silas's eyes narrowed. His instincts sharpened. Something was off. Something was watching. Araya saw the change in him, the sudden alertness, the fear morphing into caution. She felt it too, that cold shiver crawling along her spine. Her uncle had been terrified before he vanished. Now she understood why. Silas signed urgently, fingers cutting the air. "What did he tell you the night he disappeared?" Araya swallowed, her mind dragging up the memory she didn't want to revisit. He told me someone was following him. He said he found something he wasn't supposed to find." Silas's heart pounded harder. "And then," she whispered, "he said if he didn't come back in 2 days, I should find you." Silas stared at her, at this tiny girl holding the key to everything he'd spent 7 years running from. Her aunt pulled her close again. "That's enough. We're leaving. Now." But as she reached for Araya's hand, Silas lifted his palm, softly, firmly, not to stop them with force but with truth in his eyes. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't a child caught in a random mistake. This was a message. Silas knew what came next. The first sign that everything he'd buried was clawing its way back into daylight. He stood up, slowly, painfully. The entire restaurant gasped. Some had eaten there for years and had never seen him rise from that booth without help. Araya stepped back, startled. Silas didn't look strong. He didn't look wealthy or powerful. He looked like a man waking up from a 7-year coma. He signed one final thing, short, urgent, and full of meaning. "We're not safe here." Araya felt the truth of it instantly. And then the front door slammed open. A uniformed officer rushed inside, scanning the room, before locking eyes directly on Silas Carrington. The officer's boots echoed across the marble floor as he moved deeper into the restaurant. Conversations died again. Silverware stopped clinking. Something in the officer's expression said he wasn't here for anyone else. He was here for Silas. Araya stiffened. Her aunt pulled her behind her body, eyes wide with panic. Silas didn't move, didn't gesture, didn't even blink, but the tension rolling off him was unmistakable. The officer approached slowly, like he was approaching a witness or a threat. "Mr. Carrington," he said carefully, "we need you to come with us. It's regarding the man found in Queens." A ripple went through the restaurant. Ariah's heart dropped. Her uncle. Her only family outside her aunt. Silas didn't answer, obviously. He couldn't speak, but the officer continued anyway, glancing at the girl beside him. Before he passed out, he tried to write something. Just one sentence. Ariah stepped forward, hope and terror mixing in her chest. What did he say? What did he write? The officer hesitated, which told Ariah everything she needed to know. Silas closed his eyes. He already knew. 7 years taught him how to read hesitation like a book. The officer exhaled. It said, "They found her." Ariah gasped. "Oh, who did they find?" Silas already knew the answer. His hands trembled as he signed. "My sister." Ariah froze. Her aunt's hand clamped over her mouth. The officer kept going. "We don't know if she's alive or—" Silas sharply raised a hand. A command. A plea. A refusal to hear the sentence end. The officer swallowed. "We need you to identify something at the hospital. Something your sister may have left behind." Ariah stared at Silas. The man who seemed carved from stillness was now unraveling in front of her. His breathing grew uneven. His eyes glistened but didn't break. He looked like someone standing at the edge of a cliff he didn't realize he'd been walking toward. Ariah's aunt pulled her close. "Come on. We're getting out of here. This is too dangerous." But Ariah didn't move. Not this time. She stepped away from her aunt and toward Silas, because something inside her recognized the same fear she carried when her uncle vanished. She signed softly. "Do you want me to come with you?" Silas looked at her like she had just offered him the one thing he'd lived without for too long. Help. The officer cleared his throat. "We can take one additional witness. But only one." Ariah's aunt panicked. "She's a child. She's not going anywhere." But Ariah took her aunt's hand and whispered, "If Uncle trusted him, maybe I should too." Silas watched the moment silently. He didn't push. He didn't beg. But something about him, his stillness, his pain, his fear, made Ariah feel like leaving him now would punch a hole in both their futures. She turned back to him and signed with all the courage she had. "I'm coming." Silas exhaled, slow, shaky, relieved. The officer nodded. "Both of you, let's go. Now." They started toward the door. And then, as they stepped outside into the cold New York night, Silas felt it. Eyes watching. A presence he remembered. A threat he once ignored. Across the street, a black SUV engine roared to life, its headlights locking directly onto Silas and Ariah. The black SUV rumbled like a warning. Not too loud. Not too quiet. Just enough to make the hair on Ariah's arms lift. Its headlights cut a sharp white beam across the sidewalk, illuminating Silas, the officer, and Ariah like they were standing on a stage they never auditioned for. The officer stiffened. "Stay behind me." But Silas already knew that wasn't protection enough. He'd seen that model SUV before. Same tinted windows. Same low idle. Same pattern of showing up at the wrong moments. It used to appear outside his research lab late at night back when Camille was dealing with threats she didn't want to tell him about. It was the car that made her nervous. The one she said didn't belong in their neighborhood. The one she said felt like a shadow following her everywhere. Ariah tugged the officer's jacket sleeve. "Is that The same car that followed my uncle? The officer's jaw tightened. He didn't answer, because he didn't need to. The SUV slowly rolled forward. Silas's pulse quickened. His hands flexed at his sides, ready to sign something urgent. But what do you sign to a child who has already lost too much? How do you warn her that danger wasn't coming? It was here. A second officer rushed out of the restaurant behind them. Hey, that vehicle's been circling the block for 20 minutes. Dispatch is running plates now. The SUV revved once, deep, guttural, and then sped off so fast the tires screeched against the pavement. It vanished around the corner like the city swallowed it whole. Araya grabbed Silas's arm. Why are they following us? What do they want? Silas didn't have the answer yet, but he had a feeling the truth wasn't simple. Nothing from his past ever was. The officer pushed open the back door of his patrol car. Get in. Both of you. We need to get downtown before anyone else shows up. Araya sat in the middle, Silas beside her, the second officer driving. The city lights blurred past them, neon signs, street vendors closing shop, steam rising from manholes like the city was warning them to turn back. Araya couldn't stop shaking. Not from fear. Well, not only fear, but from the feeling inside her chest that kept whispering, "This isn't over. This is only the beginning." The police radio crackled suddenly. "Units be advised." Static. Then a clearer voice. The man found in Queens regained consciousness for a moment. "Doctors say he muttered something new." Araya's breath caught. Silas leaned forward. The officer turned the radio up. He said, "Tell the girl, I found her." Araya's heart dropped. Her? Who was her? Her aunt? Her cousin? Her mother? No. No. Something in her bones said that wasn't right. The officer driving met Silas's eyes in the rearview mirror. "We think he meant your sister." Araya swallowed so hard it hurt. "So, my uncle didn't just find documents." The officer nodded slowly. "No. He found a person." The words sat heavy in the air like fog humans weren't meant to breathe. Silas reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small, worn photograph, the only picture he still carried. It was Camille standing on a Brooklyn rooftop, laughing, sun on her face, her braid blowing sideways in the wind. He held it up to Araya. "She would be older now," he signed. "A little thinner. More tired in the eyes." Araya touched the picture gently. "Did you think she was dead?" Silas looked out the window. The skyline reflected in his eyes. He signed one word. "Sometimes." Araya leaned back against the seat. Her uncle had said she would be the one to start everything. She didn't believe him then. She wished she didn't believe him now. The officer suddenly tensed. "Hold on," dispatch updated the report. "They found something else in the warehouse." Araya sat up, her stomach twisting. "What?" she whispered. The officer turned the volume up again. "A jacket. Women's size. Covered in dust. Identified through old company records as belonging to." Silas squeezed his eyes shut. The officer finished. "Camille Carrington." Araya felt the weight of the moment. Silas looked like the world had cracked beneath him. And before anyone could speak again, the radio crackled a final message. "Units be advised, the SUV is back. Heading south. Fast." The driver cursed and hit the gas, because the SUV was now racing directly toward their patrol car. The patrol car jerked forward as the officer pressed harder on the accelerator. Araya gripped the seat with both hands, her heart thundering so loud she could feel the vibration in her ribs. Silas braced himself, his hand instinctively reaching out in front of Araya as the flashing lights of the SUV approached like a storm. The officers spoke in tense bursts. "Call backup. They're gaining. They're not trying to pass us. Then what are they doing?" Silas didn't need to speak to know the answer. They weren't chasing the police car. They were chasing him. The SUV swerved violently, clipping the back corner of the patrol vehicle. The impact jolted Araya sideways, slamming her shoulder against Silas's chest. He held her steady, his hand gripping her arm with surprising strength. The driver shouted, "Hold on." He made a sharp right turn down a narrower street. Steam billowed from a street vent. Somewhere in the distance, the faint wail of backup sirens began to grow, but not fast enough. Araya forced herself to breathe, forced herself to think. "They want the files," she whispered. The officers glanced back. "What files?" Silas reached into his inner coat pocket. He pulled out a thin folder, one Araya never noticed before. Inside were 2 sheets of paper. The officer in the passenger seat recognized them instantly. Those are the missing pages from the Carrington scandal investigation." Araya turned to Silas in shock. "You had them this whole time?" Silas shook his head. He signed quickly. "Camille left them for me the night she disappeared. I couldn't risk turning them in." The officer frowned. "Why not?" Silas signed something slower this time, like the weight of the truth dragged at his bones. "Because the people investigating me were the same ones she was running from." The SUV rammed them again. The impact jolted the folder out of Silas's hand. Papers flew. Araya dove to catch them. Her fingers closed around the pages just before they slid under the driver's seat. She pressed them to her chest, breathing fast. Why would anyone go this far over 2 pieces of paper? Silas pointed to the corner of the top sheet. Araya lifted it to the light. There, a small symbol. A jagged circle. A mark she didn't recognize. But Silas did. He signed. This was on Camille's door the night she vanished. The patrol car suddenly skidded to a stop as the SUV blocked the entire street, cutting off their escape. Headlights glared through the windshield like the eyes of something hunting. The officers drew their weapons. Araya tightened her grip on the documents. Silas stared at the SUV, his breath slow and controlled. A door on the SUV cracked open. A foot stepped out. Then another. A person in dark clothing approached with steady, confident steps. No fear, no rush, like they already knew the outcome of this night. Araya clung to Silas's sleeve. "Who is that?" she whispered. Silas didn't answer. The figure stopped a few feet from the patrol car. Their face was hidden in shadow. Then they spoke, calm, cold, familiar. "Silas, you really should have stayed silent." Araya felt the air drain from her lungs. Silas's eyes widened, not in fear but in heartbreak. Because he knew that voice. The figure stepped into the light, and Silas realized the person chasing them wasn't a stranger at all. The figure stepped fully into the streetlight, and Araya saw just enough of the face to understand the danger, but not enough to understand the betrayal. Silas saw everything. The sharp jawline, the familiar walk, the way the man held himself, half military, half shadow. Tavian Moore, Silas's former head of security, the man who vanished the same night Camille did, the man Silas once trusted with everything. Tavian smirked. "Surprised to see me alive?" His voice was low, casual, as if they were catching up after a business meeting instead of ambushing a police car. The officers raised their guns. "Hands where we can see them." Tavian ignored them. He looked only at Silas, cold amusement in his eyes. "I told you your sister was in over her head. But you never listen to people who know better." Silas's chest tightened. Not from fear, anger. The kind he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Araya clutched the documents tighter. Something about Tavian's smile made her skin crawl. He didn't look like someone searching for truth. He looked like someone guarding it. Someone comfortable with pain. Someone who enjoyed the game. The officer in the passenger seat cracked the door open carefully. "Stay inside, both of you." But Araya grabbed Silas's sleeve as Tavian took one slow step forward. "Give me the papers," Tavian said. "You don't know what you're carrying, girl." Araya swallowed hard. Her hand shook, but she didn't loosen her grip. Silas slammed his palm against the back of the driver's seat, startling the officer. He signed sharply. "Drive." "No." The officer didn't need a translation. He slammed the car into reverse and hit the gas. The patrol car peeled backward, tires screeching. Tavian lunged, trying to grab the back door handle, but the car jerked away too fast. He stumbled, cursed, then waved toward the SUV. The engine roared again. "They're following us." Araya screamed. The streets blurred past. Steam, neon signs, rows of shuttered bodegas. The patrol car swerved around corners, clipping trash cans and bumping over potholes. "Dispatch, we need units at Lexington and 115th, now," the driver shouted into his radio. Static answered. No voice. No confirmation. Araya's stomach dropped. Why isn't anyone answering? Silas knew why. This wasn't a chase. It was a quarantine. Someone didn't want them to call for help. He signed urgently, "Check your phone." Araya pulled hers out. No service. Not even emergency mode. Her aunt was probably calling by now, panicked, but she would never get through. Her hands trembled. Her chest tightened. The world felt too big and too small at once. Silas tapped her shoulder, grounding her. He pointed to the papers she held. "Why do they want these?" she whispered. Silas signed one word. "Proof." Araya flipped open the top page, her eyes scanning the text. A timeline. Confidential experiments. Payment logs. Names she didn't recognize. Then, at the bottom, one sentence circled in red ink. Unauthorized access detected. Subject, C. Carrington. Araya's chest tightened. She found something. Something big. Silas nodded. Tavian's SUV suddenly reappeared in the side mirror, speeding toward them. The passenger officer fired a warning shot into the air. "Back off." But Tavian wasn't backing off. He was aiming. Araya screamed as a bullet shattered the rear windshield. Glass exploded inward. Silas threw his arm in front of her, shielding her as shards rained across the seats. The driver swerved hard, nearly colliding with a parked car. The impact shook the entire vehicle, knocking the wind from Araya's chest. The SUV closed in. Tavian leaned out the window, gun raised. Silas grabbed Araya's sleeve, signing fast. "Get down." She ducked instinctively. The SUV rammed them. The patrol car fishtailed wildly. The officers struggled to control it. "We can't outrun them," the driver yelled. Silas pointed ahead, toward a narrow alley barely wide enough for the patrol car. The officer saw it, and took the risk. He turned sharply. The patrol car scraped against the building walls, sparks flying. The SUV couldn't fit. It sped past the alley opening instead, missing its shot. A moment of relief washed over the car. Then Araya saw something that froze her blood. A second SUV. Waiting at the end of the alley. Lights off. Engine rumbling. Like it knew they were coming. Silas grabbed Araya's hand as the alleyway filled with blinding headlights, because they were trapped. The alley felt like it was collapsing. Narrow walls. No escape routes. Two officers breathing hard. One terrified girl. And Silas, caught between the past and a danger so present it felt like electricity in the air. The second SUV revved forward just enough to block the only exit. Its headlights burned into the patrol car's windshield, making everything hazy and unreal. Araya shielded her eyes. "They're boxing us in." The officer reversed, but a metal dumpster behind them blocked the path. They were locked inside a concrete trap. "Everybody stay down," the driver yelled. Silas pulled Araya close as the SUV's doors opened. This wasn't Tavian. This was someone else. Someone dressed in dark clothing, moving with military precision. 2, 3, 4 figures. Araya's throat tightened. "They're coming." They moved fast, too fast. One approached the patrol car's passenger side, shining a flashlight through the broken glass. "Step out," the masked man ordered. "Now." The officers raised their guns, but Silas knew they were outnumbered. Outskilled. And the masked team didn't fear the police. Araya pressed herself against Silas, her breath shaking. Why are they doing this?" Silas tapped her arm, trying to calm her. He signed slowly, deliberately. "Not us. The truth." The masked team spread out, positioning themselves around the vehicle. One of them slammed a metal tool into the door hinge, trying to pry it open. Another covered the alley entrance with a rifle. The officers fired warning shots upward, but the masked team didn't flinch. Araya's hands trembled. "Are they going to take us?" Silas didn't answer. The fear in his eyes said enough. The man at the hinge finally forced the passenger door wide open, tearing it off its frame. He reached inside. The passenger officer fought him, kicking wildly. But another masked figure struck him across the temple. The officer slumped, groaning. Araya screamed. Silas used his body to shield her, pushing her down until she was almost tucked under the seat. He braced himself as another masked figure reached through the shattered window for him. Silas punched the man's wrist. Raw instinct, practiced muscle memory, and the man flinched. Not enough. Another figure grabbed Silas by the collar, yanking him toward the broken glass. Araya reached out, screaming, "Stop! Stop hurting him!" Her voice cracked. Something inside the masked man froze, just for a moment, at the sound of a child's raw desperation. But then he pulled harder. Silas's feet scraped the floor as he was dragged halfway out of the vehicle. Araya couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. All she could do was act. She lunged forward, swinging the only thing in her hand, the folder of documents. The pages scattered like feathers, fluttering across the alley floor. The masked man paused to block the papers from flying into the SUV's wheels, and that tiny pause was all the driver needed. He slammed the patrol car into drive. The car lurched forward. The masked team stumbled back. Silas slipped out of the attacker's grip, hitting the seat hard. The officers didn't aim for escape. They aimed for impact. The patrol car smashed into the front SUV, pushing it several feet deeper into the alley. The crunch of metal echoed through the night. Steam burst from the engine. Sparks danced across the pavement. A moment of chaos. A moment of possibility. Araya grabbed Silas's hand. "We have to run." Silas nodded. The officers shouted, "Go! Go now!" Araya and Silas climbed out the opposite side of the mangled patrol car, stumbling over scattered papers. Silas grabbed the most important pages with shaking hands. The masked team regrouped quickly. Much too quickly. A voice rang out behind them. "Don't let them reach the street." Araya didn't look back. She just ran. Silas right beside her. They reached the end of the alley, bursting into the open sidewalk, just as a new pair of headlights flashed across their faces. Not an SUV. Taxi. The driver rolled down the window, eyes wide. "Get in if you want to live," Silas pushed Araya into the back seat, but when he turned to climb in after her, someone grabbed his shoulder from behind. Silas barely got Araya into the back seat before a hand clamped around his shoulder, hard, determined, merciless. The grip pulled him backward with so much force that his feet scraped across the pavement. Araya screamed his name, lunging toward the open door. "Silas!" Her voice cracked. The taxi driver shouted for her to stay inside, but she fought him, leaning halfway out the window, reaching her arms toward the man who had protected her, trusted her, chosen not to abandon her even when it would have been easier. Silas twisted, trying to pull free. His attacker yanked harder. The man dragging him wasn't Tavian. This man was bigger, thick arms, tactical gear, masked, silent. A foot soldier, not a mastermind. Silas slammed his elbow back, connecting with the attacker's ribs. The man grunted, loosening his grip just enough for Silas to stumble forward, half falling, half running toward the taxi. "Get in," the driver shouted. Silas lunged, but the masked man grabbed the collar of his coat again, dragging him backward one final time. Araya screamed so loudly the sound fractured the night. "Let him go." Her hands flew to the window, signing frantically, even though the masked man couldn't understand. "Please, please, don't take him." The masked man didn't budge. He raised something in his hand, a metal object that glinted under the streetlight. A symbol was carved into it. A jagged circle. The same symbol Silas found on Camille's bedroom door the night she vanished. The same symbol on the top corner of the documents Araya carried. The same symbol he saw spray-painted on a concrete wall in the Queen's warehouse 7 years ago. Silas froze. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. He stared at the symbol like it was a ghost dragging him under. The masked man leaned close to Silas's ear, voice muffled but clear enough. "She warned you not to look." Something inside Silas cracked open, years of guilt, silence, and memories swallowing him whole. His hands shook violently. His knees buckled. His breath turned shallow. The taxi driver shouted again, "Kid, pull him." Araya didn't hesitate. She reached through the window, grabbed Silas's wrist, and pulled with all the strength her small body could gather. The attacker tried to yank Silas back, but another car screeched into the alley entrance, nearly hitting the masked man. The distraction gave Silas just enough time. He tore free. He dove into the taxi. Araya pulled the door shut. The driver hit the gas. The masked man pounded on the trunk once, hard, leaving a faint mark of the jagged circle behind. A sign. A claim. A promise. Araya collapsed against Silas, trembling. He held her with arms that no longer felt steady. She looked up at him, eyes glossed with fear. Why did he have that symbol? Silas didn't sign anything. He couldn't. He leaned his head back against the seat, shaking, trying to breathe past the memory that refused to loosen its grip. The symbol was more than a threat. It was a message from the past. A message from Camille. Araya wiped her eyes. "Silas, what does it mean?" He didn't answer with words or signs. Instead, he reached into his coat, pulled out a folded piece of paper, old, creased, almost crumbling, and held it out to her. A note, written in Camille's handwriting. Araya unfolded it slowly. Just 4 words were written inside. "Don't trust Tavian more." Araya felt her stomach sink. "Your sister knew," she whispered. She knew he was dangerous. Silas nodded slowly, painfully. He looked smaller in the seat, not physically but emotionally, like the weight of 7 years had finally landed on him all at once. Araya touched his arm gently. "Silas, are you okay?" He didn't look at her. He just let his head fall forward, his hands covering his face as the taxi sped deeper into the city. For the first time since the accident, since Camille vanished, since his voice was taken, Silas Carrington looked utterly, completely broken. As Silas finally lowered his hands, Araya saw something he didn't, her phone buzzing with a blocked call from her uncle's number. Araya stared at her phone like it was a live wire. The screen glowed with the words, "Unknown caller." But below that, the number. Her uncle's number. Her throat tightened. Her fingers trembled as she held it up. "Silas, it's him." Silas lifted his head slowly. His eyes were glassy, unfocused, heavy with the storm still rolling inside him. But when he saw the number, something sharp flashed across his expression. Fear, hope, disbelief all at once. Araya answered with a whisper, "Hello?" Static. A hiss. Then, a voice. Choking. Weak. Strained. "Ari, ya?" Araya's heart nearly burst out of her chest. "Uncle? Uncle, I'm here. I'm here." The taxi driver looked at them through the mirror, eyes wide. Silas leaned forward, trying to catch every breath on the line. "Sweetheart," the voice rasped. "Listen, carefully. Where are you?" Araya begged. "Are you safe? Uncle, please." "No time." A cough. Then another. Wet, painful, terrifying. Araya pressed the phone harder to her ear. "Don't talk, just tell me where you are. We're coming to get you. Please." The voice lowered to a tremor. "Don't trust the police." Silas's body stiffened. Araya nearly dropped the phone. "What? They're helping us." "No." The breath faded in and out. "They're working with him." Silas grabbed Araya's wrist, not hard but firm, telling her to keep listening, keep going. "To who?" she asked. "Who are you talking about?" A long pause. Then faintly, "Tavian." Silas closed his eyes. Pain twisted across his face. Araya felt dizzy. "Uncle Tavian chased us. He almost took Silas. He's not alone," the voice croaked. "Not the leader, just the hand." Araya didn't understand. "Then who is the leader?" Her uncle inhaled sharply, the sound like tearing fabric. "You saw him." Araya froze. Araya froze. She had only seen one face. One figure. One man whose voice still made her skin crawl. The masked man with the symbol. The man who dragged Silas across the asphalt. "No," she whispered. "No, uncle, he didn't say his name." "Who is he?" Her uncle tried to speak again, but suddenly the call crackled violently. Silas leaned closer, gripping the seat as if he could force the signal to stay alive. "Uncle," Araya cried. "Don't hang up. Please. I'm here." One more word emerged, barely formed, fading with each syllable. "Camille." Araya's entire body went cold. "Your sister," a gasp. "Alive." Silas's breath caught. The world stood still. Then, "Don't let them." The call cut. Dead. Araya burst into sobs. "No, no, call back. Call back." She dialed, shaking uncontrollably. No signal. No ringing. Nothing. The taxi fell completely silent except for Araya's frantic breaths. Silas reached out slowly, placing his hand over hers. She grabbed him, holding on like a child gripping a life raft. "Silas," she choked out. "He said she's alive. Camille, she's really alive." Silas nodded, but it wasn't a motion of relief. It was a motion of terror. Because if Camille was alive, and Tavian was hunting, and the masked man was the leader, then Camille wasn't just alive. She was in danger. Araya wiped her tears, trying to steady her breath. "Where are we going now?" The driver answered softly. "The officer told me to head to Mount Sinai. That's where they took your uncle." Silas stiffened. He signed slowly. We can't go there. Araya blinked. But he's hurt, maybe dying? Silas shook his head. He signed with trembling fingers. He warned us. Tavian isn't alone. The police aren't safe. Araya stared at him, realization sinking like ice water through her veins. Then where do we go? Silas drew a shaky breath. He reached into his coat again, pulled out Camille's last note, the one that said, "Don't trust Tavian more," and flipped it over. Araya gasped. There was a second note on the back. A location. An address. The place Camille wanted Silas to go, if she ever disappeared. As the taxi turned sharply, Araya saw the street sign ahead, leading them straight into the darkest part of Harlem. The taxi turned off the main road and rumbled into a quieter stretch of Harlem where the streetlights flickered like old memories. The buildings were older here, brownstones with chipped paint, metal gates covered in graffiti, windows that looked like tired eyes watching everything. Araya shifted closer to Silas. The air felt different in this part of the city, thicker, heavier, like the streets themselves held secrets. Silas watched the street names pass with sharp attention, his breathing unsteady but focused. The address on Camille's note pointed them toward a block Silas remembered only in fragments, flashes of a conversation with her 7 years ago. She had mentioned volunteering in Harlem, but she never said exactly where. "Stop here," Araya told the driver when the taxi crawled past the right street. The driver parked quietly. "This where you need to be?" Silas nodded and signed a quick thank you. Araya followed him out of the car, her small hand slipping into his without hesitation. She wasn't sure who needed comfort more, him or her, but she didn't let go. The street was almost silent except for the distant thump of music from an apartment 3 houses down and the low hum of a street light struggling to stay lit. Silas led Araya toward a narrow walkway between 2 buildings. She tightened her grip. "What is this place?" Silas didn't sign immediately. He stepped forward, brushing aside a rusted chain-link gate. Behind it stood an old community center, boarded windows, faded mural, a sign half peeled off. Araya squinted, reading the chipped letters. The Camille Carrington Youth Initiative. Her breath caught. She had a center? For kids. Silas closed his eyes. The memory hit him with so much force it nearly buckled his knees. This building was supposed to open the month she vanished. She spent years planning it, pouring her heart into it, believing kids who felt overlooked deserved a place to be seen. Araya touched the door gently. "Silas, she built this for kids like me." Silas nodded, fighting back everything he'd been holding inside. Araya stepped inside the dark foyer, her sneakers hitting dusty tile. Her voice echoed softly, "Do you think she ever came back here? Before she disappeared?" Silas followed her, scanning the walls, the corners, the shadows. He didn't sign, but Araya knew what he was thinking. Yes, Camille had come back. And Camille had left something behind. A soft beep broke the silence. Araya jumped. Silas held up his hand, motioning her to freeze. He stepped ahead of her, toward a faint red light blinking on the far wall. An old security panel. A keypad. What made Silas stop cold wasn't the panel. It was the piece of tape stuck above it, old, wrinkled, but readable. For the one who kept listening. Silas's throat tightened. He traced the words with shaking fingers. Araya whispered, "She left this for you." He nodded. He entered a 5-digit code, Camille's birthday. The panel beeped again. Then the locks clicked open. A hidden door slid slightly ajar. Araya gasped. She had a secret room? Silas exhaled, the weight of 7 years lifting just enough for him to stand straighter. They stepped inside together. A small room. Warm yellow lamp. Dusty desk. Notebook stacked neatly. A map of New York covered in pins and red lines. A jacket Silas recognized immediately, his sister's, hung neatly on the wall. Araya whispered, "She was looking for someone." Silas nodded. Papers covered the table. Records of her own investigation, names of people involved in the scandal, addresses, sketches of symbols like the jagged circle they saw earlier. And at the center of the table, a photograph. Araya's uncle, standing with Camille, both smiling. Araya covered her mouth, tears forming. She knew him, she trusted him. Silas placed his hand gently on her back. She turned to him. "We have to find her." Silas signed. "Together." Araya nodded. "Together." It wasn't spoken out loud, but it was an agreement, a partnership, a turning point. The first moment Silas wasn't running alone. Just then something on the desk vibrated. A tiny blinking light from a hidden audio recorder. Araya leaned closer. "What is that?" Silas pressed play. Camille's voice filled the room, soft, desperate, afraid. "If he finds this, if Tavian finds you, run." Araya covered her mouth. Silas's hand froze on the device. Camille continued. "But if Araya Coleman finds it, then it means everything has begun." Araya's knees buckled. She dropped into the chair, trembling. Silas turned to her, shock and fear written across his face. Camille had said her name. 7 years ago. Before Araya was even born. Camille's voice crackled through the speaker one last time. "Silas, if you're hearing this, then he knows where she is." The room fell silent long after the recording stopped. Araya stared at the little device like it held the rules of a game she was just now realizing she'd been a part of since birth. "How could she know my name?" Araya whispered. Silas didn't answer. His silence wasn't emptiness this time. It was calculation. His eyes scanned the walls, the maps, the documents Camille left behind. Her handwriting looping over notes, arrows pointing to addresses, questions scribbled in the margins. Araya forced herself to breathe as she rose from the chair. She approached the map slowly. Pins covered most of Manhattan and Queens. But one location was circled 4 times in red. "Silas," she whispered, pointing. "This place, does it mean something?" Silas stepped beside her, tracing the circle with trembling fingers. He recognized the address. Not from Camille, but from Tavian. It was the same warehouse district Tavian once said was non-essential. The same location Silas was warned never to investigate. The same place Araya's uncle had been found unconscious. A cold wave rolled through Silas's chest. Araya exhaled shakily. She was tracking them. She picked up another notebook, small, leather-bound. She opened to the first page. Her heart stopped. Araya read aloud in a soft, breaking whisper. "If something happens to me, the girl who signs will carry the message." Her hands trembled so hard the notebook slipped from her fingers. Silas caught it. He opened to the next page. Camille's handwriting continued, sharp, urgent. "He's watching me. He knows what I found. I have to protect the one who can finish what I started." Araya backed away, overwhelmed. "This doesn't make sense," she breathed. "Why me? I'm just a kid. I'm not part of this." Silas held her shoulder gently. She turned to him. "Tell me the truth. What did she mean?" Silas exhaled slowly, his hands moving in deliberate, heavy motions. "Camille spoke with your uncle often. They worked together. She told him about a girl she dreamed of, over and over, who would help her uncover the truth." Araya shook her head, backing up another step. "So I'm what? A prophecy?" Silas signed. "A hope." Araya wiped her eyes roughly. She didn't want to cry. Not here. Not now. But pieces of her life, Her uncle's warnings, the sign language lessons, the note he left, were slotting into place like puzzle pieces she never knew existed. How long was she searching? Araya asked. Silas looked at the walls. Years, he signed. Araya stepped closer to Camille's desk and traced a red string connecting two photos, one of the Queen's warehouse, and one of a tall building Araya recognized instantly. Silas, that's your old lab. He nodded. He didn't want to, but he did. Araya flipped the page in the notebook. Another symbol appeared, the same jagged circle. Why does this symbol keep showing up? Silas lowered his gaze. He signed carefully. Because Camille didn't disappear by accident. Araya's breath stilled. Silas pointed to a line written in bold ink. Follow the circle to find the truth. Araya felt the room tilt. Your sister, she was hunted. Silas nodded, jaw trembling. A sudden sound made Araya jump. A soft thump. From upstairs. Silas stiffened. Another thump. A footstep. Araya's breathing grew shallow. Someone's here. Silas motioned for quiet. He moved toward the door, silent, precise. The footsteps grew louder. Araya backed toward the wall, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Silas edged toward the hallway, positioning himself between her and the danger. A shadow appeared under the door frame. Araya squeezed her eyes shut. The doorknob turned. Silas raised his hands defensively. The door creaked open. A silhouette stepped inside, tall, hooded, breathing hard like they'd been running. Araya's voice broke through in a whisper. Is that Tavian? The figure stepped forward, removing the hood, revealing a bruised, terrified face. Not Tavian. Her uncle, barely standing. He collapsed into Silas's arms and whispered, They found her, and they're coming for you next. Her uncle's body was heavier than it looked. Silas caught him just before he hit the floor, lowering him gently onto the dusty carpet of Camille's hidden room. Araya dropped to her knees beside them, tears already gathering at the corners of her eyes. Uncle? Uncle, look at me. Please look at me. His eyelids fluttered weakly, barely lifting. His breathing was shallow, like each inhale was a fight his body wasn't sure it could win. Silas placed 2 fingers at the man's throat, checking his pulse. It was there, but faint, unsteady. Araya's voice shook. What happened to him? Who did this? Her uncle coughed, wincing sharply. He lifted one trembling hand and pointed toward Silas. No, not at him, behind him. At the stack of notebooks Camille left behind. Files? He whispered. They're killing for the files. Araya gasped. Silas clenched his jaw. It confirmed what he already feared. Camille hadn't just uncovered a conspiracy, she had uncovered a target on anyone who carried the truth. Silas tapped gently on the floor to get Araya's attention, then began signing. He needs water. And time. Both are dangerous. Araya wiped her tears and nodded, trying to steady herself. Okay, I'll find something. But before she could stand, her uncle grabbed her wrist. His eyes, clouded with pain, locked onto hers. Listen to me. His voice was barely a threat. They found Camille. Araya's heart dropped. Is she alive? His breath caught. He closed his eyes, then opened them slowly. Yes, she's alive. But she's weak. Hiding. Silas froze. His entire body went still. The words he'd waited 7 years to hear, words he gave up hoping for, hit him so hard he had to steady himself on the wall. Araya saw his face break for the first time. Really break. Her uncle continued, gasping between each sentence. She tried to expose them. She told Tavian she was going to reveal the truth. A cough. They locked her away. Somewhere she can't escape. Silas's fingers twitched. His breath quickened. His vision blurred. 7 years of silence. 7 years of guilt. 7 years of believing he failed her. And now she was alive. Araya touched Silas's arm gently. We'll find her. Together. Silas met her eyes, raw, vulnerable, shaken. And then something happened that shocked them both. A sound came from Silas's throat. Not a gasp. Not a choke. A sound. A voice. A rough, broken whisper. Camille. Araya's eyes widened. Silas, you spoke. Silas looked stunned, like he didn't even recognize the sound as his own. His hand flew to his throat, feeling the vibration that hadn't existed for years. His uncle-in-law nodded weakly. It's coming back. Because you're fighting again. Silas swallowed hard, overwhelmed. A knock suddenly echoed through the building, loud, violent, unmistakable. Araya froze. Silas's uncle whispered urgently, They followed me. They know you're here. Silas grabbed the man by the shoulders. Where is she? He rasped. His voice cracked, but the urgency carried through. The man lifted a shaking hand and pointed toward the notebook map. Specifically, to the Queen's Warehouse district. A red circle. 4 times around. Underlined twice. Her last message, said the truth, is under the floor. Araya whispered, Under the floor? Of the warehouse. The man nodded once, then slumped unconscious. A loud crash sounded from upstairs. Boots. Multiple pairs. Araya's pulse skyrocketed. Silas stood, every instinct rising in him again. He offered his hand to Araya. She grabbed it without hesitation. Where do we go? She whispered. Silas looked at the blinking recorder, Camille's notes, the map, the jacket. Then he looked toward the back exit. He signed with fierce clarity. To the warehouse. Araya nodded, fearful yes, but braver than she'd ever been. Another crash. More footsteps. Closer. Silas leaned down, lifting the unconscious uncle across his shoulder with surprising strength. Araya grabbed the folder of papers and slung Camille's jacket over her arm. They didn't look back. Not when Silas opened the hidden door. Not when they slipped into the night. Not even when a shadow passed through Camille's room seconds after they left. They only ran. As they reached the alley, Araya saw a faint red laser dot slide across Silas's back. Someone had a weapon aimed directly at him. The red laser danced across Silas's back like a warning from the universe. Araya didn't think, she reacted. She lunged forward, grabbing Silas's coat and yanking him sideways just as a gunshot cracked through the night. The bullet tore into the brick wall behind them. Run! Araya screamed. Silas didn't hesitate. He threw Camille's unconscious friend onto his shoulder more securely and sprinted down the alley, Araya right beside him. Another gunshot echoed, sparking against metal. More footsteps followed, fast, disciplined, coordinated. They weren't just chasing. They were hunting. Araya's lungs burned. Her legs felt like fire. But she kept running, kept pushing because she knew what was waiting at the end of the chase. Camille. Alive. The truth. A reason. The taxi driver from earlier screeched up at the far end of the alley, door already open. Hurry, he shouted. Don't argue, get in. Silas shoved the unconscious man into the back seat, Araya diving in after him. Silas climbed in and slammed the door closed. Hold on, the driver yelled. Tires screeched. The car rocketed onto the street as another bullet shattered the rear window. Araya ducked, covering her head. Silas shielded both her and the unconscious man with his body. The masked team spilled out behind them, shouting into radios. They're moving east. Cut them off at 125th. Don't let Carrington reach the river. The taxi driver cursed and swerved through traffic. He wasn't a hero, just someone who saw the truth and decided not to be a coward. Araya clutched the seatbelt. "We're going to the warehouse district. The one on the map." He nodded. "I know the one. Hold tight." The ride was chaos, horns blaring, people shouting, the city blurring past in streaks of gold and red. Silas checked the unconscious man's pulse again. It was weak. Too weak. "Stay alive," Araya whispered. "Please, stay alive. For him. For Camille. For every kid center she never got to open." Silas signed at her. "We'll find her." Araya nodded, more determined than ever. "And when we do, she'll explain why she chose me." Silas didn't have an answer to that. But he didn't need one. Sometimes destiny chooses the one who's willing. Sometimes it chooses the one who listens. And sometimes it chooses a 12-year-old girl with trembling hands and a fierce heart. The taxi screeched to a stop in front of the Queen's Warehouse district. Araya's breath caught. It looked abandoned. Broken windows. Graffiti on the walls. Chains on the doors. A dead streetlight flickering like a heartbeat. "Are we too late?" she whispered. Silas shook his head. He stepped out, lifting the unconscious man again. Araya followed, her hands still clutching Camille's notes. They approached the door slowly. Silas tried the handle. Locked. Araya reached into Camille's jacket pocket on instinct. Her fingers brushed metal. A small key. "Silas," she breathed. "She left it for us." Silas's eyes widened. He took the key, inserted it into the rusty lock. It clicked. The door creaked open. Cold air rushed out, air that smelled like dust, rust, and secrets 7 years buried. They stepped inside. Flashlights cut across the darkness. Shadows stretched across the cracked concrete floor. Old machinery stood like tombstones. Araya shivered. "This place feels wrong." Silas nodded. He set the unconscious man down gently, then began searching the room, touching the floor, scanning the walls, checking every inch. He stopped suddenly. A section of the concrete was raised slightly, too perfect to be natural. Araya knelt beside him. "Is that it? The floor she wrote about?" Silas lifted the crowbar lying nearby and wedged it into the crack. The slab moved. A hidden door beneath. A hidden truth beneath that. He pulled it open. Araya leaned forward. Her breath froze. There was a staircase leading underground, and the faint sound of someone crying for help. Silas grabbed Araya's hand, because the voice calling up from the darkness belonged to Camille. Silas didn't breathe. He couldn't. The voice echoing up from beneath the warehouse floor, weak, trembling, muffled by layers of concrete and time, was a sound he once memorized but never expected to hear again. "Silas? Is someone there?" Araya's fingers curled into the sleeve of his coat. Her heart raced in her ears. She felt the weight of the moment before she fully understood it, the kind of moment that rewrites a life in a single breath. Silas dropped to his knees, the crowbar clattering beside him. He leaned toward the opening in the floor, tears welling before he could stop them. His voice, rusted and broken, escaped again, softer than a whisper. "Camille." A gasp rose from the darkness. "Silas?" He reached down into the opening, arms shaking with a mix of fear and desperate hope. Araya held the flashlight steady, angling it into the stairwell. Dust swirled in the beam as the small underground space slowly came into view. At the bottom of the staircase, pressed against a wall, was a thin figure, wrapped in a torn blanket, breathing hard, eyes red and wide. Camille Carrington. Her hair was tangled, her face gaunt, but she was alive. A sob tore from Silas's chest. He didn't care who heard. He didn't care how his voice sounded. He reached down with both hands. Camille cried out and scrambled upward, her movements clumsy but determined. Silas leaned farther, gripping her arms as if he feared she might vanish again. When he finally pulled her up far enough to see her clearly, he froze. She had the same eyes, the same trembling smile, the same warmth, just hidden under years of fear. Camille collapsed into him, shaking violently. Silas held her close, one arm tight around her shoulders, the other bracing her head gently. Araya's own eyes filled with tears. She'd never seen a hug hold that much history, that much loss, that much relief. Camille whispered into Silas's chest, "I thought you died. I thought they got you too." Silas cupped the back of her head, his fingers trembling. He forced out one strained word. "No." Camille's gaze drifted upward, landing on Araya. A slow, knowing sadness spread across her face. "You found her," Camille whispered. Araya blinked. "Me?" Camille nodded weakly and reached out a shaky hand. Araya stepped forward, letting Camille grasp her fingers with surprising tenderness. "I dreamed about you long before you were born," Camille whispered. "I didn't know your name, but I knew what you would do." Araya felt her throat tighten. "Camille, why me?" Camille smiled faintly. "Because you're brave enough to listen when others run." Silas swallowed hard, brushing a tear from Camille's cheek. "How long?" he rasped. Camille's expression dimmed. 7 years. "Who did this?" Araya demanded, voice trembling with anger. "Who kept you here?" Camille's eyes shifted toward the far corner of the warehouse, toward a metal door with thick locks on the outside. She whispered one name. A name Silas never wanted to hear again. Tavian. Araya's heart dropped. Silas felt his blood freeze. "He was supposed to protect me," Camille whispered. "But when I found out what he was doing with the files, he turned on me. He told me if I didn't disappear, he would disappear me." Silas clenched his jaw. "But he wasn't alone," Camille added. Araya stepped closer. "Who else?" Camille slowly turned her head toward the warehouse entrance, as if she already knew who had followed them. The building creaked. A distant metal clank echoed. Camille's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's here." Silas pulled her closer, eyes darting toward the dark hallway. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Not Tavian's heavy stride. A voice drifted in, smooth, calm, venomously composed. "I see you finally open the floor." Silas stiffened. Araya froze. Because the voice didn't belong to Tavian. It belonged to someone Silas once trusted even more. Camille whispered, terrified, "Silas, that's him. That's the real one. The man who started everything." The footsteps grew louder. Slower. Deliberate. Silas turned, positioning Camille behind him and pulling Araya close to his side. The flashlight beam wavered as Araya's hand shook, casting fractured shadows across the dusty warehouse walls. A figure emerged from the darkness. Not a masked soldier. Not Tavian. But a man in an immaculate charcoal suit, polished shoes echoing softly against the concrete floor. He stepped into the light with the confidence of someone who believed they owned the room. And for years he had. Araya whispered, "Who is that?" Silas swallowed, jaw clenched so hard it trembled. This was a face from his past. A face from the boardroom. A face from the night of the explosion. Elias Reddick. His former business partner. The co-founder of the original Carrington lab. The man Silas once considered a brother. Elias smiled coldly. "It's been too long, Silas." Camille shuddered behind him. Silas felt her grip on his coat tighten. Araya glanced between them, trying to understand. "He's the leader?" Camille nodded weakly. "He's the one who ordered it all." Elias sighed dramatically. You always had such flair for the dramatic, Camille. That's what made you dangerous. He walked casually toward them. Not rushed, not worried, not threatened. As if he had already won. Silas stepped forward, blocking the path. Elias smirked. Ah, finally found your voice, have you? Silas didn't speak, but his glare said everything. Araya clenched her fists. Why are you doing this? Why did you lock her away? Why chase us? Why hurt my uncle? Elias studied her, amused. You must be Araya. The girl Camille rambled about in her little journals. Araya felt chills run down her arms. Elias laughed softly. Camille always believed some child was destined to expose me. Imagine that. A child. I'm 12, Araya snapped. Exactly, Elias replied. Ridiculous. But sadly, not impossible. Silas moved another step forward. Elias lifted a hand. Careful, old friend. You and I both know your body hasn't fully recovered. Silas's jaw flexed. Araya felt a surge of anger rise inside her. She stepped forward. Silas grabbed her hand, shaking his head, but she didn't stop. You hurt people, she said, voice trembling but strong. You hurt families. What? What was so important you had to take everything from them? Elias's expression changed. No amusement now. Only irritation. Power? Elias said simply. Why else? Silas was going to ruin everything with his ethics and his fears and his ridiculous loyalty to the truth. He took a slow step closer. Camille found out about the Neural Project. She found out what Tavian and I were doing behind Silas's back. She found out where the money was going. She even found the offshore accounts. Araya's breath caught. Camille whispered, he was selling military-grade prototypes to private buyers. Without oversight. Without records. Elias shrugged. America is built on capitalism. Araya glared. You're a monster. Elias smirked. I'm a realist. And I would have succeeded, if you three had stayed where you belonged. In the past. Silas signed angrily. You tried to kill her. Elias's smile thinned. I tried to protect my future. At the cost of your soul? Araya shot back. Elias's eyes sharpened. He raised his hand. And from behind him, the sound of weapons cocking filled the warehouse. Masked figures stepped into the light, rifles raised. Camille whimpered. Silas pulled her close, shielding her body with his own. Araya stepped in front of Silas, her tiny figure shaking but unmoving. No, she whispered. You're not taking him. You're not taking her. Not again. Elias tilted his head mockingly. How touching. Then his expression turned ice cold. Take them. The masked men moved forward. Silas grabbed Araya's hand, pulling her backward toward the underground staircase. Camille tried to stand but stumbled. Silas caught her, guiding her down the steps. Gunfire erupted across the warehouse. A bullet shattered a pipe. Another ricocheted off a metal beam. Dust exploded into the air. Silas, Araya, and Camille ducked behind the staircase wall. Araya panted. What do we do? Silas signed. We fight. Camille squeezed his arm. Silas, the truth is below. You have to show her. Araya blinked. Show me what? Camille nodded toward the underground chamber. The real files. The ones that prove everything. Silas turned toward the stairwell. The masked men moved closer. Gunshots echoing. Elias smiling. Araya gripping Camille's jacket with both hands. Silas made his choice. He led them down into the darkness. At the bottom of the stairs, Araya saw a steel vault door, and her own name carved into it. Araya froze at the bottom of the stairs. There, embedded in the steel vault door, scratched into the metal by a trembling hand, was a single name: Araya Coleman. Her heart felt like it stopped. Camille reached out and touched the inscription with shaking fingers, tears slipping down her cheek. "I carved that 7 years ago," she whispered. Araya's voice trembled. "But I wasn't even born yet." Camille nodded. "That's why it terrified me." Silas ran his fingers over the grooves in the steel, deep, desperate, like Camille had carved them in darkness, not knowing if anyone would ever see them. Above them, gunfire rattled the warehouse. Elias's voice echoed through the stairwell. "Bring them up. Now." Araya looked at Silas. "What's inside? Why would she put my name here?" Silas signed slowly. "She believed you were the key." Camille reached into her pocket and produced a small, rusted key, the twin of the one Araya found earlier. "This opens the vault," Camille whispered. "But Silas, you have to be the one who turns it." Silas took the key gently. His hands were still trembling, but his eyes were steady now, finally steady. He inserted the key, turned it. Click. The vault door groaned open. Cold air spilled out, carrying the scent of metal and old secrets. Inside the vault was a dimly lit chamber lined with servers, hard drives, and a single glass case containing a device Silas recognized instantly. The prototype. The one Elias claimed had exploded. The one Silas believed destroyed. It wasn't destroyed. It was hidden. Araya inhaled sharply. "This is what they wanted?" Silas nodded. Camille swallowed hard. "This device can read neural impulses remotely. If perfected, it could control machinery, even people. Elias wanted to sell it to private buyers." Her voice cracked. "I tried to expose him." A sound cut through the room. A metallic thud. Boots hitting the staircase. "They're coming," Araya whispered. Silas moved in front of Camille, grabbing a metal pipe from the floor. Araya clutched the files tighter, pushing the case back inside the vault while Camille struggled to stay standing. The first masked man stormed down the stairs. Silas swung the pipe with raw strength, connecting with the man's forearm. The rifle clattered to the floor. Silas kicked it away and shoved the man against the wall. A second soldier rushed in. Araya threw a dusty toolbox at him. It wasn't heavy, but it stalled him long enough for Silas to slam him onto the steps. "Go!" Camille cried. "We have to seal the vault." But Araya shook her head, eyes fierce. "Not without Silas." Then, a gun clicked sharply. Elias stood at the top of the stairs, pistol aimed at Silas's chest. "You never learn, do you?" Elias smirked. "You always protect the wrong people." Araya stepped in front of Silas before she could stop herself. "No," she screamed. "You want me? Here I am." Elias hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. Silas reached forward, hand trembling, not signing this time. Speaking. His voice was rough, cracked, painful, but unmistakably his. "Leave her alone." Araya's breath caught. Camille's eyes widened. Silas Carrington had spoken. Elias laughed. How poetic. The mute billionaire finds his voice just in time to lose everything else. He took aim again. Araya whispered, "Silas?" Silas pulled her behind him, standing tall even as Elias's pistol tracked his heart. "No more running," Silas rasped. Elias fired. But the bullet never hit Silas. Camille shoved him out of the way. The bullet tore through her shoulder. "No!" Silas screamed, his voice cracking, breaking, returning. Araya screamed too as Camille collapsed into Silas's arms. Elias stumbled, stunned that she intervened. And in that moment, a shadow moved behind Elias. A figure tackled him from behind. A masked man, no mask anymore. Tavian. He ripped the gun from Elias's hand, smashing the man to the floor. "You ruined everything," Tavian snarled. "Everything we built." Elias hissed. "You fool, without me you're nothing." Silas stood, eyes sharpened, voice rising despite the pain. "You're both finished." Police sirens finally filled the distance. Dozens of officers stormed into the warehouse. Weapons drawn. Orders shouted. Elias and Tavian were pinned to the ground. Silas held Camille tightly while Araya held both of them. For the first time in 7 years, they were together. As uniformed officers carried Elias away, he whispered a final warning to Silas: "This isn't over." Hospitals smell like hope and fear mixed together. Soft beeping machines. Wheels squeaking down polished floors. Whispers carrying more emotion than shouts. Araya sat beside Camille's hospital bed, her small hand holding Camille's bandaged one. Silas stood near the window watching the sunrise spread across the Harlem skyline, a sunrise he never thought Camille would live to see. Camille stirred. "Araya?" Araya leaned closer. "I'm here." Camille smiled weakly. "You saved us." Araya shook her head. "You saved me first." Silas stepped forward, voice still fragile but real. "Camille, you're safe now?" Camille squeezed his hand. "Because of her." Silas nodded. "Because of her." A soft knock came at the door. The taxi driver poked his head in, awkward but earnest. Just checking on the heroes." Araya grinned. Silas gave him a respectful nod. Officers followed behind, different officers this time. Clean uniforms. Honest faces. "Mr. Carrington," one said, "we've confiscated every piece of evidence from the warehouse. Your sister's testimony, Araya's documents, the device, it's all safe now." Silas breathed out, relief filling his chest. But the officer wasn't finished. "And Elias Reddick won't see daylight again." Araya squeezed Camille's hand harder. The world felt lighter, brighter, more possible. When the officers left, Camille turned to Araya. "You know, I always wondered what you'd be like. The girl in my dreams." Araya blinked. "You dreamed about me?" Camille nodded. "For years. A girl with brave hands. Hands that speak truth." Araya's eyes filled. No one had ever said that to her before. Silas wiped his own eyes and sat beside both of them. "We need to tell the world the truth," Araya said softly. Silas nodded. "And we will." Camille smiled. "Together." Silas placed Camille's jacket, the one Araya carried from the warehouse, across her lap. Camille traced the fabric with trembling fingers. A hospital PA announcement echoed softly. "Visiting hours end in 15 minutes. But Silas ignored it. He knelt beside Araya and whispered, clearer than he had spoken in years, "You gave me my voice back." Araya shook her head. "No, Silas, you always had a voice. You just needed someone to hear it." The room went quiet. The soft, healing kind of quiet. The kind that doesn't hurt anymore. Araya stood to stretch. Camille shifted in her bed, grimacing but healing. Silas opened the hospital window slightly, letting sunlight pour in. For the first time in 7 years, the world felt whole. Araya looked at Silas, then at Camille and whispered, "I want to learn more sign language. Not because I need it, but because it helped me find you." Silas smiled. A real smile. The first anyone had seen from him in years. Epilogue moments flickered like film scenes. Camille testifying before a federal panel. Elias's empire collapsing. Tavian awaiting sentencing. Silas speaking publicly, shaky, imperfect but brave. Araya standing beside him, signing his words for the world. Silas created a new foundation. The Araya Initiative teaching sign language to kids across the country. In Camille's honor. In Araya's spirit. Weeks later, Silas sat at the Hudson Terrace, not alone this time. Araya beside him. Camille across from him. 3 lives changed forever by a girl who dared to speak with her hands. Araya looked out at the river, smiling. Funny, she whispered. This all started because I asked if you were okay. Silas looked at her. Eyes soft. Voice steady. I am now. Araya glanced at the river and signed one last message, unseen by the world but heard by both of them. And this is only the beginning. Want to see more stories like this? Subscribe to Slush Stories as we'll be dropping more stories every day of the week.